All right, let's talk about the updates in the case of embattled Empire actor Jussie Smollett. Now, you remember Smollett. He faked a hate crime, claimed that he was beaten up by two guys in MAGA hats, saying this is MAGA country in very liberal Chicago. Well, a grand jury returned a 16-count felony indictment, and those charges included lying to police about being the victim of a hate crime. Those charges carry felony weight in the state of Illinois. He's facing up to 48 years in prison if convicted on all counts. That's according to Illinois sentencing guidelines. Now, his actors have denied the charges and said they are prosecutorial overkill. Smollett claims his alleged attackers put a noose around his neck and poured a substance thought to be bleach on him. Well, that all turned out to be false. I should say, allegedly false. And that's where I want to welcome in our next guest, former federal prosecutor and founder of Freedom Watch. You've seen him on the show many times, Larry Klayman. Larry, good to see you.
Good to see you too, John. How are things going?
Good, good. All right, Larry, I'll tell you what, I expected charges, but I didn't expect from a liberal Chicago jury, these Democratic voters who vote for people like Barack Obama and Rahm Emanuel, did not expect them to return a 16-count indictment on this guy. I don't care who you are. That's hard to beat. That's hard to beat 16 counts in any court anywhere in the United States, isn't it?
It is, but, as they say, John, you can indict a ham sandwich. You don't need evidence in front of a grand jury. I'm not in any way defending Jussie Smollett, who obviously did something, really terrible. But in the end, I can assure you, based upon my experience and everything that you know and everyone else knows, that he's going to get off with a slap on the wrist. They'll plead him off.
They'll plea him, right, yeah.
Nothing. No, it won't. They're not going to do it yet. But given the way things are in this country, we're all equal. I'm in effect, a civil rights lawyer in a way. But if you're a minority these days, and I'm a minority, but not the minority that's on the right side of the street, I might add, and you might ask Ilhan Omar about that one, is that you're not likely to have the book thrown at you in the end because it's not equal anymore. Is that minorities?
But Larry, let me ask you a question about that, because you and I are on the same page with the Smollett case. We both think the guy faked this thing. We both want to see some jail time. But in courts around the country, right? I was a cop. You were a prosecutor. Nonviolent offense. Yeah, he wasted resources. First-time offender. Well, he had that DUI where he used his brother's ID, but he's not a violent criminal. 75-80% of these cases are pled out anyway. And if you've got the money to hire a lawyer like Mark Garagos, I would say that number rises to close to 100% are pled out. So that in and of itself won't be unusual.
You're right. But, and this is part of the problem in our justice system. Look at the family law system, where a lot of time husbands or wives, false allegations are made, particularly the male winds up on the short end of the stick sometimes in family court, where a woman can come in and make false allegations and walk off scot-free. And again, I'm pro-women's rights. Believe me, I represent Laurie Loon, who was harassed by Roger Ailes, to put it mildly, and others. I represented the women who were harassed by Clinton. But this is the problem in our justice system. There are protected species in this justice system. And you're right. I mean, he'll be pled out and probably in the ordinary course, but this was a cynical use of race, which is part of the whole modus operandi of the left. And Don Lemon at CNN, he barely noted that this was something wrong. So it tells you what's going on here.
I think there should be heavy restitution paid. We're talking about six figures in police overtime, forensic, lab fees, DNA testing, things of that nature.
You're right.
I hope he has to pay that back at least.
His entertainment career should be over.
I agree.
Punishment.
All right, before I let you go, Larry, let's talk about Fox News host Tucker Carlson. Now, he's coming under fire from people on the left for controversial comments he made about women more than 10 years ago on a radio program. Let's listen to some of those.
I feel sorry for unattractive women. I mean, there's nothing they did,
What's better than hockey, weed, and I mean...
But first of all, there's no Canadian woman that you'd want to pay to sleep with. Anybody who answers my trophy wife is my favorite possession is my hero. I don't give a shit. I'm voting for the guy.
Larry, look, the guy was being snarky. He's being over the top. I think it was Howard Stern's show he was on or a host on the Howard Stern channel on satellite radio. I mean, that's the theme of those shows. But I go back, the left is virtue signaling on this, right? They're hysterical about what Tucker Carlson said, but they forget one of their favorite spokesmen, Jimmy Kimmel, got his start, rose to fame on something called The Man Show, where the feature were women called juggies jumping on trampolines. Kimmel's worn blackface. His girlfriend at the time, Sarah Silverman, wore blackface. The left gets a pass for doing things that, in my opinion, look, I don't care what any entertainer does if they're over the top. That's entertainment. But if the left is going to cry foul, man, they're giving their people a pass for doing things that would be considered far more egregious by their own standards.
You're absolutely right about that. But in the case of Tucker Carlson, and I've had experience with him going way back, Tucker, no lack of respect, is a chameleon. He takes the form and shape. He's kind of like Zelig of whoever he's with. And I know that because when I was running Judicial Watch in the early 90s, he did the first profile of me, one of them, for Time magazine. And it wasn't the profile of a conservative. And then I used to be on CNN's Crossfire a lot, and he was one of the co-hosts from time to time. And he would chastise me for the cases I would bring against Clinton. He knew he was on CNN. Tucker is not a real conservative in many ways. He's a little bit like, others who portray themselves to position themselves with certain networks and media and this and that. He's not a bad guy, but Tucker tends to go with the flow. Love the one you're with.
But putting all that aside, the hypocrisy, we have 30 seconds. Hypocrisy of the left in this one is glaring, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The Me Too movement in Hollywood is just a way to jingle change. Right. Ask Laurie Lemon, and I'm pursuing matters for her right now with regard to Roger Ailes, Fox, Blumhouse, and Showtime. There is a hypocrisy on the left which is beyond belief. You're absolutely right, Sean.
All right. Former federal prosecutor, founder of Freedom Watch, Larry Klayman. Larry, always good to see you.
You too.